All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Best Self Blueprint. So, as you all know, the mission of this podcast is to bring on people with the knowledge, insights, and experiences as to what it takes to truly move that dial towards becoming the best version of yourself. So, this next guest has been seen on New York Weekly, Yahoo Finance, Fox, Influencive, and other major outlets. He's a well known sales and business coach that has mentored over 500 sales and business professionals while building his own highly successful business. His ability to close not only in business, but in life is exactly why he's living the lifestyle he wants while building a business doing something he loves. So, to officially introduce Pouya Haidari, how's it going, man?
Good, man. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet. I am really excited for this one, especially like I said beforehand, like diving into your content, what you're about. I think this is perfect to have someone like you on to talk about how to build that lifestyle. So, one thing I really want to talk about is you use the term aggressive patience when you're telling
Yep.
your story. So, if you could explain what you mean by that and how you implemented it, I think that'll be huge.
Yeah, 100%. I think that really comes from me being a young individual myself. I'm currently 25, and I'm not even sure if I shared that with you earlier, but on our previous conversations. But I think that comes from myself and my journey. I got into sales and business at 16 years old, and it was always that aggression and wanting results fast and wanting to get things done and wanting to get to a certain place by a certain age. And I think a lot of people in our generation and younger generations especially share that. And what gets misconstrued and a little bit of misinformation out there, or just conflicting information that confuses people, is this whole thing of aggression versus patience. And you have big names pushing patience, and they talk about you got to be patient, you have to be patient with the results, patient with the outcomes. And then you have other big names that are preaching the exact opposite of be aggressive with your goals, be aggressive with where you want to go. You need to be maximizing every hour of the day, productivity, 5 a.m. club, things like that. So I think for the younger generation, it can get really confusing. And I feel like I was in those shoes myself. And I just had to really kind of go through mentor after mentor, course after course, investing, a couple $100,000 in myself before the age of 25 to get to those answers and get some reality on the situation. And what I really came down to is it's aggressive patience. You have to have both, because with your micro steps, with your day-to-day habits, with what you do today, you have to be aggressive. Because if you're not, there's somebody out there in your space, in your field, working 24 hours a day, like Mark Cuban says, to kick your ass. And if you're not being aggressive, you're just going to lose out. You're not going to be the greatest or whatever it is you're striving towards. Um, and if that's not the goal, that's fine. But if that is the goal, then you need to be aggressive and you need to be doing the work on a micro basis. Now, when it comes to the macro picture, I'll just refer to Tony Robbins here, where he says most people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade. So that's what patience to me means. It's on a macro scale. It's on a 5, 7, 10 year, probably, maybe even 20-year scale. And most people can't even comprehend that far ahead. With investing, the best, greatest investors of all time, Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio, all of these people have 20-year time horizons, if not forever, in the investments that they make, right? So those guys think with that. All of the greatest minds on the planet, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, I've heard them say with their companies like SpaceX or Blue Origin, any micro decision they make is with a 5 to 7 year time frame in mind. So you need to be patient with the macro, with the really large scale things, with the bigger goals that you have. But to get there, you're going to have to be aggressive on a micro level.
Dude, yeah, I like how you're breaking out the quotes from like all these different people. So I want to break this down into the two different sectors, I guess. So we'll break it down into, for people who are aggressive, how do they implement patience? And for people who are a little too patient, how do they implement that aggression? So we'll start with people who, because I've been in these shoes a lot, where it's like they're super aggressive, they're super hungry, they want those goals, but they don't implement the patience. What are kind of the first steps you have for people in that boat?
Yes, I would say that's the easier one. I think it's a lot easier to teach the aggressive person patience and to teach them that longer perspective than it is to teach the I would say, more comfortable person, how to be aggressive and how to want more. And again, that is not to say that that's the right way, so I'm not necessarily condoning that. You could be completely happy and be making 50K a year and be doing a job that you're totally satisfied with, spending all the time with your family. If that's happiness and success to you, then that's happiness and success, period. I don't think there's a, definite answer or a black and white truth. So, but I would just say, I've had conversations with people in sales or in business that are trying to be more aggressive or more driven. And they've told me, believe it or not, I had a conversation yesterday with an older buddy of mine, and we just caught up, and he's like, man, somebody like you is always going to be way more successful than me because you're just so much more driven than I am. I'd rather be comfortable. And I don't know what to tell that person if that's what they would rather do. Right. So I'll get to your question, but I just wanted to say that's the harder one to teach. I think the easier one to teach is the person that already has the drive, has the aggression, like yourself, like you just said. I'm in the same boat as well. I think I've always naturally had a lot more of the drive, just the tenacity. Of course, it's where I come from as well, being born and raised in the Middle East till I was 10 years old. First time I met my father, I was 10 years old. So I was raised by women in the Middle East. If you know anything about that, it's really rough. So I had to be the man of the house early and go through a lot of trials and tribulations and things like that. So that definitely added a whole different layer to my drive and character and added that fuel. So for me, I had to learn to be patient because I just realized not being patient with the outcome doesn't serve me, and I think all aggressive minded people need to really understand this. It's good to really want these big goals and want to get to all these places in your life. But if you're constantly beating yourself up for it, if you're constantly missing these targets that you're setting for yourself, if you're playing a losing game that you set up for yourself, like you're setting these targets, you're setting up the game. And if you're setting yourself up to lose, you're going to be constantly disappointed. And I think that becomes a downward negative spiral. And obviously, we don't want that, right? So I would say you need to set up a game for yourself to win. That's why I talk about the micro and the macro. On the micro, set up some things you need to do every single day. If it's hitting the gym, it's hitting the gym. If it's writing down your goals, it's writing down your goals. If it's, getting one new client on board is one new client, whatever that is, setting up some controllables that you can do on a day-to-day basis where you feel like you've won the day, you feel like you've won your game on a micro scale, and then that'll set you up to win on the macro scale as well. So I would just say, some strategies would be to set up a game for you that you can win and not to set crazy unrealistic expectations that you're going to continuously miss, and to eventually get yourself in this space where you're in an upward spiral and you're building. It's brick by brick, layer by layer. You're building towards where you're going. And, you're now putting up 5 bricks and then kicking them down every day.
Yeah, man, I dig that. And I like what you say about, and I've preached this so many times on here about you need to set up the small wins.
Mhm.
Like you said, you need to set up a game that you can actually win, because if you're taking that, this is where I think people kind of stretch it too far, is what you're saying. They're aggressive with those like 5-year goals, but they're expecting them to happen now. And I just like, I try my best to get that point across where it's more in the habitual aspects of things. It's more in the daily practice of things where you start putting those bricks, like again, you lay it just brick by brick, and eventually you've got that beautiful wall that you've been trying to set out and build. So I absolutely love the way you put that. Now, like you said, this is going to be the harder one, but for people
Mm.
who they're comfortable, they're not at a job they hate, they're at a place that's tolerable, and so they are over, in my opinion, maybe not to them, they're overly patient, and they have that thing in the back of their head that they want more and they deserve more and all of that, but they're not quite at the level of ambition and drive. How do those people kick it into high gear?
Yeah, I think you're actually being generous here, calling them overly patient. I would say they're probably procrastinating. They're probably lazy. They probably have bad habits. It's probably a combination of all those things. Um, I think it really comes down to whatever you're doing, whether you're, more on the comfortable and patient side or you're on the aggressive side, whatever it is. I think it comes down to having an ideal of the life that you want to create, like that ideal scenario, that ideal lifestyle, what are some goals, like whatever, even if it's with your relationships, right? Even if it's not money, if it's something else, if it's your personal fitness, if it's your mindset, what are some goals that you have? What's the ideal lifestyle? I think getting clarity on that is the first step for these people that are more patient and more on the, patient side of things. I think regardless, they don't need to be aggressive, quote unquote, if they're, allergic to that word for whatever reason. They can stay patient, but they need to get clear on what their ideal scenario looks like, what their ideal life looks like. And then what they need to do is look at where they're at currently and what steps they need to take to get there. And then get aggressive with that, whatever that is. You know what I mean? So I think it comes down to that. A lot of times where people are procrastinating or they're stuck where they are, they're just not clear on where they want to go. They just don't have that clarity on their future, on what goals they have. That's why I think goal setting is such a powerful tool, because I've been goal setting every single day since I was 16 years old. It's just something I do in the morning. It's like part of the journaling that I do. I've done all the other things too. I've done gratitude journaling, all these other things. They just didn't stick with me. The one thing that always stuck with me was goal setting, because I just knew writing down my goals every day, and then I've come to an actual way that I do it, where it works for me. And we can get into that if you'd like to give some value to your audience. But throughout the years, I've come to a way that I do my goals, and it really helps put my focus on where I need to be, where I need to go, gives me clarity on where I'm going. And that helps me be more aggressive on a day-to-day basis, on a weekly, on a monthly, so that I know I need to get to these goals. But if you've completely lost track of where you want to go, if you have no idea what the next month, year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years hold for you, and you don't have any plans, then yeah, you're more than likely going to fall into that bucket of overly patient people, aka procrastinators. And the way my first mentor, Jim Rohn, would put it is, if you don't have a life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's life plan for you. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. And that's the way he would put it. And the first time I heard that at a young age, I was like, okay, I need to really start to put together my own life plan. And when you do, and you start to really look at what you want with your life, and you're like, okay, this is where I am, this is where I need to be, I still got a lot of work ahead of me, then you start to get aggressive. You start to look at what actions you need to take to get there, So I would say that's probably the first step to doing that.
So to dive into another aspect of it, like you said, like once people realize like, okay, I got to amp it up, I have these bigger things that I want for myself. I want to know what your opinion is on this. I think a lot of people get scared because all of a sudden they see where they're at, they see where they want to be, and now there's a chance for failure. And people don't like having a chance of failure, especially the bigger the goal you set, the higher the chance of failure. Again, before you connect with mentors, do your research, start implementing. And so I think that's what takes a lot of people out of the game is they believe that they don't have what it takes right now, and so they never will, aka the fixed mindset. But I think that's a problem that a lot of people need to overcome, is the fear of failure. So do you agree, disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with you. And I think what needs to happen there is some perspective, right? Like if you just take things on a super macro level, like let's just zoom out of our lives and get some perspective. And I'm not talking like perspective you could live in a different part of the world. I know what that's like. And I know the opportunities that we have here on this side and how grateful we should be just to be here. So I do have that type of perspective, but let's even go beyond that. Let's go on a macro scale. You're on planet Earth. You're on this rock that's spinning at ridiculous speeds in the middle of this universe that we know so little about, that's so extremely vast. It's literally awe-inspiring. It's mind-boggling. You can't even grasp it. Even if you see it written down, you see the numbers, you see the whatever we know scientifically, you still can't grasp it. You can't wrap your head around it. You're on this spinning rock. Like anything could happen. What fear of failure? What are you even talking about? The fact that you even have an opportunity to go for something, to have a goal, to do something. And, now go onto a lower level of perspective. There's people around the world that are focused on their next meal, focused on survival. And you're talking about your goals. You're talking about what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and you have a fear of failure. I think that's just lack of perspective. That's why the immigrant mentality is such a real thing. That's real, believe it or not. Again, speaking, I'm one of them. You're hearing from one. This is a guy, myself, that moved here to Canada, I'm talking about, but moved to the west side of the world, at 10 years old, and I didn't speak a word of English. I didn't speak a single word. And I had to learn English from scratch, literally every night, studying the dictionary, writing words down, defining them, putting them in sentences, figuring it out, learning in school, listening, picking up as much as I could, doing all that. And then sales and communications and speaking became my thing, became my go-to, became my business, became, the thing that I specialize in, ironically enough. But coming from an immigrant himself, that perspective is real, because when you know what life could be like and you know what life is like, and you have that constant comparison, there is no, fear of failure. It's, you're on planet Earth. You could die any day. Anything could happen. A freaking comet could hit the Earth and we could all be wiped out. Whatever. We saw that with COVID, a pandemic. If that virus was any more serious and it was, legitimately threatening to our, population, we could have all been wiped out. There's so many different things. If you just think about the possibilities, I don't want you to do too much of that because then you really might be crippled. But if you think about some of these possibilities, you know, I don't see fear of failure even being an option. I don't see how people could really get bogged down with that. One last thing I'll just say on this is I think it might be the wrong information. A lot of times, if you're thinking in that mindset, if you're constantly down, depressed, being negative about life, having a fear to go after your goals, fear of breaking out of your comfort zone, fear of failure, all these things, it's more than likely that you're either around the wrong people, you have the wrong influence around you, friends, family, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it might be, your job, your boss, whoever, it doesn't matter what position they're in or what authority they hold in your life. They could be the wrong influence. It's you're reading the wrong books or listening to the wrong podcasts, watching the wrong TV shows and movies that are putting this image of the world in your mind that may not be real, may not be very accurate, and it's just you're not really taking a conscious control over the information that you're intaking, right? The information that you're putting in your mind. Another quote to reference my first mentor, Jim Rohn, is stand guard at the door of your mind. And if you can just do that, if you can just stand guard at the door of your mind and not allow anything and everything in, I think you're going to be better off.
Dude, so there's one thing that just keeps ringing in my head about what you said, and it is that, and I'll go back to one of my favorite documentaries of all time is the documentary Free Solo of Alex Honnold climbing El Capitan.
I haven't seen that.
And so he's one of the most insane extreme athletes I've ever seen. He free solo, so like no safety gear, just these crazy rock climbing routes. And at the very beginning, people ask like, why do you do this? Do you have a death wish? All of that. And he said something that to this day just is ingrained in my head. He said, what people don't understand is you could conceivably die on any given day at any given moment. And yes, there are some things that make it more imminent, but it could happen to anybody. And when he said that, I was like, holy crap. Like I would get in the car and I'd think about it. I would walk into a building and I'd think about it. And all of a sudden it just put into my head, like, if you genuinely could, your life could end at any moment on any day. What is the point in fearing failure? Like, why not take the risk? Why not go for the game-winning shot day in and day out? Because like you said, if you have the right perspective, if you fail, you're exactly where you were before, maybe with a little more experience, maybe with like a new connection to somebody, but you're still not worse off if you fail. And even if you are, then you have the experience. Now you know what not to do next time you take a crack at it. But I absolutely
listen,
love
man,
that.
what's the alternative? Sorry to cut you off, but just to jump in here, what's the alternative? Like you can fear the going for your goals and this fear of failure, but if you don't go after your goals, if you don't start to take control of your life, start to move in the right direction, what's the alternative? What are you going to do? Sit on your couch? Just think about that. What's the alternative? And if the alternative isn't something you're happy with, then less making excuses, more action,
So true and very direct, which I love. All right.
Yeah.
So I want to get into it because you said you have a daily goal setting ritual. Dive into that for people, because I think like I talk about it all the time about you need to have a morning routine. Part of that morning routine should be intention setting. And I think having like actual tangible goals is a big part of that. So if you could run people through what you do, I think that'll be a huge help.
Yeah, for sure. So just to preface this for everybody, again, I started writing down my goals when I was 16 years old. So from then until now, been just about a decade, there's I've tried many different ways to write down my goals. I've bought a bunch of different courses from different entrepreneurs and business owners and whatever who talk about this stuff. I've been to a lot of seminars, business conferences. I've invested a lot in myself, worked directly with a lot of mentors. So I've tried a lot of different ways to do my goal setting, to write down my goals, to do this exercise. And there's so many variations of it. There's people that don't go beyond 3 months or 6 months when they're setting goals. And that's almost a religious practice to them. And they intentionally don't go anything beyond that. There are people that only write down 10-year goals and big, giant goals that just give them a perspective of where they're heading, just really to paint the picture of where they want to go in life. And then there's the in between. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong way to do it. I genuinely think I used to believe in this black and white advice. It's either wrong or right, truth or, wrong, whatever it might be. So I realized, people are really different. Like we're all different. We're all wired differently. So there's nature and there's nurture. And I think they both play a part. I think how we're genetically wired down to our hormones and all this stuff is directly affecting us on a day-to-day basis. And then if you look at nurture, where we come from, the cultures we grow up in, it's so completely different that of course that has an influence on you. So I think everybody's different. Everybody's perception of reality in their lives are different. So I don't think one practice would work for everybody. And that's why I've kind of come to my own after so many years of goal setting. So I'll share what I do. And if it works for you, great. Try it out. If it doesn't work for you, no problem. Figure something out of your own. The point is you have to keep doing it. The point is to write down your goals every day, to have this practice daily. So eventually it starts to change and shift for you. And then you'll get something that you're happy with and that'll work for you. So for me, my goal setting is broken down into 5 different categories. So the first is personal. So I would literally write down personal at the top of the page. And personal is mind and body. So I write down any goals that are related to me learning, me growing, me investing in myself, like just mindset wise. So for example, you could see something like I'm reading 2 to 3 books per week. Whatever kind of like goals, I'm meditating every single day. It could be something like that. It's related to my mindset. And usually it's about reading, it's about self-education. And then when it comes to my second part of that personal goal is my physical goal. So you could be like, I'm at 10% body fat by this date. I'm at 170 pounds by this date, whatever it could be, right? Depending on what I'm looking for or what my goals are at that moment in time. So it's the first category is personal. The reason I have it set up in this way, by the way, if you're going to try it my way, don't rearrange it. Just try it the way I've put it together, because obviously I've put thought into it and this is what works. And there's a real intention behind the way I've laid it out and the order that it's in. So first is personal, because I truly believe you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. There is no other way. This whole thing of people wanting to be selfless, wanting to do charity, wanting to, just be philanthropists, that's all great. But if you don't have anything to give, you can't do that. Like if you truly want to be selfless and change the world, go make $1 billion, become a billionaire. Because then, like Bill Gates, you can cure freaking diseases off the face of the planet. You can do a lot of things. Just give it all away. Don't hold on to a single dollar, but you got to have some money in order to be selfless. But anyways, back to this. So I think you need to take care of yourself first before you do anything else. That's why first category is personal and is mind and body. Second category is relationships. So relationships, for me, that goal is mainly around my relationship with my girlfriend and kind of like what I want for our relationship, anything growth wise, any next steps that are in the plans, like anything of that nature, I would put in there. Trips and traveling that we do together, like anything of that nature would be in there. If you don't have a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and if you're not in a relationship or you're not planning to, not a problem. Use that category for your network. Could be relationships in general. So friends, family, what kind of relationship do you want to have? What kind of people do you want to have around you? What kind of circle of influence do you want to have? What kind of network do you want to be in? What type of people do you want to have around you on a professional level? So you could set your goals, anything to do with relationships, because I believe that comes next. Especially when it comes to partners and, your wife, husband, girlfriend, boyfriend. I think that dynamic is very important and needs to be handled and needs to be healthy and growing at all times for you to move on to what's next, which is business. So the third category is business. I would literally just write down business, and that's self-explanatory. Business goals, income targets, revenue targets, whatever, anything to do with business. So I would write down my business goals there. The next category, the fourth one, is investments or investing. And that's different than business, because business is how you actually generate your income and produce your income and the impact that you have on the world with the product or service that you're exchanging. But investing is how you're building your long-term wealth, how you're building, setting up your long-term future, your generational wealth, however you want to see it. So the next is investing. That's obviously with a bigger time frame in mind, because again, investments are with a longer, bigger horizon in mind. So that's my fourth category. And then the fifth one, I added in more recently, and I realized that's necessary. And I realized as I'm coaching people and working with entrepreneurs and sales professionals, this is something that's actually missing. And the moment we make this tweak, it actually makes a difference in their minds. And that's fun goals, literally just fun, F-U-N, fun goals. And I would write down watches that I'm looking at that I want, cars that I'm looking at that I want, vacation homes and properties that I want, whatever. You can feel free to have fun here. You can, whatever you really want to put down that actually excites you, that puts a purpose and a fun aspect to this whole thing. And again, puts it into perspective, back to that topic of life. At the end of the day, you're here, you have this one opportunity, this one life, you have to enjoy it as well. You have to be truly fulfilled. So if you don't have that, if you're missing that piece, you're just not going to feel happy. And that's where the whole saying of money doesn't make you happy comes from. That whole saying is nonsense, because being broke doesn't make you happy either. So what? It makes no sense. Like, anybody who says that just has no idea what they're talking about. So yes, money doesn't make you happy. Being broke doesn't make you happy either. I've been both. I've had money and I've been broke. I know which one I choose every single time. And, so that's nonsense. But the truth behind that is, yes, you do need fulfillment, and fulfillment usually comes from relationships and experiences. And there's actual studies that have been done. I like to look into this and study a lot of this stuff. I've always been curious, and I've read different studies that have been done, like multi-year studies where they've taken young kids in college all the way till their deathbed and studied them. And the ones that had the highest life expectancy and actually lived the longest had the deepest, most meaningful relationships and had a variety of experiences in their lives. And I think those two factors are probably the most important things in life. And everything else is just so you can have that, if that makes sense. But those are the 5 categories that I do my goals in. And one note on this, because I get this question all the time when I explain this, I would only write down 3 goals per each category. If I'm going to write down a fourth and a fifth, so 2 more, it would be like a long-term thing where I just want to write it down to just have that there. But really 3 goals per each category. I think that even might be too much, because you just can't focus on those many things at the same time. And I think the less, the better. One thing I learned from Tim Ferriss is he says it's not about addition, it's about elimination. So you don't want to look at adding things in to your life. You want to look at what you can actually take out and eliminate, so you can focus more time on the things that matter. So that's basically my goal setting practice.
So first of all, I think everyone should do that if they have no method right now of goal setting or intention setting or anything like that. You need to follow that. I think that's awesome. A couple more things I want to talk about. One of them is, you talked about you need to add fun, and you need to add that rewarding, fulfilling aspect of goal setting. And I think that's so important. And I've actually recently talked about how for a while, and this goes back to what we were talking about in the beginning, I was very aggressive towards my goals. I was always setting daily, weekly, monthly, yearly goals, revising them, trying to up the ante on them, just always trying to push progression. And I wasn't really doing anything fun for myself, aside from checking the boxes of really big goals that was exciting to me. But there was no fun for the sake of fun. And that was something I got reminded of a few months back. And since I've started implementing it again, it's made everything so much more satisfying as I go through the process. So I think that's amazing. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other thing I want to talk about is, you have to be selfish in order to be selfless. I think that is so important. If you think about energy in terms of a cup or a bucket, if you have nothing in your bucket, you cannot expect to take what's in your bucket and fill up anyone else's. You have to fill yours up first. And then once you get to the point where it's just overflowing, then you take and pour into those other buckets. And what you talk about with business, with investments, with taking care of your mind, your body, your spirit, your energy, your relationships, once you have that cultivated and you're really working on growth in that, you're going to get a bigger and bigger bucket, and you're going to be able to pour it into more and more things. Just like you said, if you, I completely want to set up charities. I want to make sure I'm donating time, money, energy, all those things, making sure I'm helping out the people who are close to me. But you have to be in a position to do that in order to do that. And so that's where I think it gets lost in translation is, if you're out to go make a ton of money, like you said, like money won't make you happy. I think this is where people tie into that of, if you're only thinking about money, you're a selfish person. Or you can take the path of working a humanitarian job where you're making almost no money. And I think people lose the middle ground of, you can go out and pursue a really lucrative career. You can go out and make all the money you want to make, and then it's up to you what you do with that money. You don't have to go spend 100% of it on yourself and blow it off. Like, you can give it back to your parents and retire them early. You can help out friends in need. You can give to charities. You can start up your own foundation. And so I
Mhm.
think that's what I really want people to take home more than anything else you said is, you have to make sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you can go take care of other people.
Yeah, 100%. There's no two ways about that. And I think ironically enough, the people that talk about you don't need money or money won't make you happy or all these things are the ones who are actually selfish, not the people who are going for the money, not the people who are aggressive and have these goals like yourself and myself. I don't think we're the selfish ones because we're looking to set up our lives in a way that we can take care of everybody around us. And, when things happen, you're able to provide for your family, for your friends, whatever it is. But you're really the one that's being selfish if you're adding all these negative connotations to money and wealth and working hard and all these things, and you're just sitting on your couch. And when something comes up, when your family needs something, what are you going to be able to do for them? What value can you add? What value can you provide? And if you take no ownership of that, then you're the one who's selfish. You're the one who's wasting this gift of life and the opportunities again that you have here, especially if you live in a country where you have opportunities, where you have freedom, then you're the one that's really selfish. So that's the irony there, But yeah, man, for my own personal experience, the reason I have that mindset and the reason I write my goals that way is because I learned that at a very young age, at 16, 17, 18, 19, up to 21, where I made my first six figures. I had invested a lot of time and money and energy and resources in myself. And I had already done so much personal development by then that that's why these quotes and things just come off because it's literally ingrained after, a decade of doing personal development, investing in myself, reading books like you see behind me, all of these things, you know, then I'm able to actually, when I got into positions of leadership, management, executive positions, I was able to actually pour into other people. I was able to actually really have perspective on where people are coming from, what they need, what's required. I had that prior knowledge. I wouldn't have had any of that if I didn't invest in myself, if I hadn't poured into myself. So I think that's absolutely critical. And I think that's why I think investing in yourself is by far the biggest thing. That's why I truly believe in the quote, the saying that formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. That's absolutely true. I dropped out after first year university. It was one of the best decisions of my life that I'm, super proud of. Yeah. And it was for that reason. It wasn't because school was hard. School was easy. I don't think I ever tried or did homework, any of that. And I could coast and get pretty good marks with ease. That wasn't the issue. It was the fact that I knew where I had to go in life, where I wanted to go, the goals that I had, the ambitions and desires that I had for my life didn't require this piece of paper. And if anything, it required an exact opposite mindset of that because I wasn't looking to be, a cog in the system or anything of that nature. So, and then I also at the same time at 16 years old saw the value of self-education, got exposed to mentors like Jim Rohn, was traveling all over the US, going to conferences, business seminars, meeting people that are super successful and, brushing, rubbing elbows or shoulders or whatever you say with them, and just putting myself in those situations where I saw what's possible. And I realized like, man, if I just pour into myself, if I just invest in myself, then, anything is possible. I can do whatever I want. And that's where the whole philosophy and ideology comes from. And I truly believe that. I think for you to be able to be selfless, you have to be selfish first.
Yeah, clearly I agree very aggressively. And so my next question ties into a few different things we've been talking about how to actually accumulate wealth, how to build the life of your dreams, how to get off the couch and start doing the things you need to do. I think this also might tie into the goal setting that you implement. But one thing I want you to walk people through is you talk about this multiple times, the reverse engineering process for creating the income you want. So what does that process look like if you could break it down? Let's say personally, let's say I want to make $100,000 a year.
Mhm.
How do you start reverse engineering that for people so that they can really take it away and start taking action?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing to understand is it's simple, not easy. It's simple. There's a difference between easy and simple, right? So for anybody that doesn't know that, easy would mean it's easy to do. It's not easy to do, but it's simple to do. It's simple to understand and do the right things and carry them out. Yeah, I think wealth generation and generating income, generating revenue is huge. That's the top of the funnel. That's the first thing that needs to happen before you can save that money, before you can invest that money, before you can help other people. That's what needs to happen. And I think reverse engineering is the way to do it. So what I would say to that is, if your target, for example, is $100,000 a year, so you want to hit the six figures, the way you would go about achieving that goal is by reverse engineering it. And this is called the law of averages. It has a bunch of different names in sales and in business, but essentially you reverse engineer the goal. So you realize, okay, what is the opportunity or the vehicle that I'm in currently? So whatever job you're in, whatever business you're in, if you have your own business, whatever that is, what's the opportunity and what's the vehicle that you're currently in? And with for 100K a year, that's like what, 83, 33 per month that you need to be selling. So off the top of my head, I think that's what it is. They need to be closing or selling in total revenue. And you look at your product or your service and you see, okay, my product is, you know, just speaking generally worth $1,000. So I would have to, sell minimum 8 of my product or service per month, ideally looking at about 10, maybe even more to set a safer goal in order to hit that target and in order to make eventually by the end of the year my six figures. So I think just breaking it down, what people don't do is they don't break down the numbers. They don't do the math. So if you want to hit six figures, 100K a year, do the six figure math, right? It's very simple. Do the math on what it takes. How much is that per month? How much is that per week? How much is that per day? Do you know? Have you done the math? How much is that biweekly? Like if you don't do the math and it's not real to you, then it's just a dream or a wish. A goal is different from a wish or a dream. Which one is it? So first you have to identify that. If it's a goal and a real target, then you got to break it down. You got to do the math. So you break it down and then you look at the vehicle you're in and how much your products and your services cost. And if you're working a job, then you would have to look at your commission because that's where you're getting paid, not the total revenue of what you're selling. You can sell a $20,000 package. If you only get paid $1,000 off of that, then you need to go off of $1,000, right, to get your six figures. So if you're in a job or in a sales job or anything of that nature, you look at the commissions or the percentage you're taking home. If it's your own business, you look at your profit margins and whatnot, and then you just reverse engineer and you see what you need to do on a weekly, monthly basis in order to hit that target.
Very well said. Yeah, but seriously, it was something like you said, it's simple, it's not easy. And that was something as simple as it was. I was 100% the type of person who, let's say my goal, and for a long time, my goal was like flat 100,000 a year. And that was all I thought about. That was all I looked at. And because like a lot can happen in 1 year, as you very well know, and so to just think about it on the scale of a year is such a bad metric to go by because, again, there are a lot of ups and downs that happen in a year. You could have 3 amazing months and then just get rocked for the next 6. And
Mhm.
so you need to be measuring it. I started breaking it down. I would measure by week and then also by month. So I had a weekly goal and a monthly goal. And that's when I really started rocking, was when I could say, like, okay, analyzing this last week, what did I do well if it was a good week? What did I slack on, or what didn't go my way if it was a bad week? How do I switch things up? How do I add new things? How do I subtract things that weren't working well? Like we were talking about earlier, it's usually addition by subtraction, taking
Mhm.
out distractions, taking out things that no longer serve you. Um, in and out of business. That could be just in life. And that was where I really started seeing success, is what you're talking about, where you really start to break it down and look at each little detail of what's going into it and how are you actually going to pursue it as opposed to just dreaming it.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one thing to note there as well is you have to look at what the goal is. And if it's 100,000, for example, why 100,000? How did you come to that number? Is it just because it sounds good? Is it, is it a real goal for you? Does that actually achieve what you want? Because I'll tell you right now, I hit 100,000 or six figures when I was 21, and I've done multiple six figures since then and beyond. And 100,000 more than likely won't get you to the lifestyle that you want. Most people, when they hit 100,000 a year, they realize, oh, I'm actually, I feel more broke than I ever did because I feel like I'm there, but I really can't do all the things I wanted to do. And depending on where you live and your expenses and things like that, of course. So I think the goal needs to be personalized to the lifestyle that you want. And this ties back in with goal setting, like you said. So if you want to buy a property, if you want to have a certain car, if you want to do this and that, if you want to travel this year, whatever it is, how much money is that going to require? And then how much money do you want to actually save and be able to invest besides that? So then you need to really break it down and do the math and break it down to percentages and have different buckets that every dollar that comes in goes into these separate buckets. And this way, that you're actually working towards a real target that once you achieve is going to actually fulfill the goals that you have. So I think you need to figure out what that real number is for you. It could be 88,000. Maybe it's not 100K, maybe it's 88 grand. Anything above that is great. It could be 250, it could be 250K. And before that, you can't really meet your goals. So then the target needs to change to 250K. So it depends on what you want to do. I would tell people, don't pick a generic number like 100K or 1 million. It's like, okay, great. But what's the real target? Like why that number? So that's one thing I would tell people. And I would just tell you to get some reality on your goals. And then once you do, then go ahead and do the reverse engineering and break it down and figure out exactly what you need to do to be able to hit that goal.
Heck yeah, man. I love it. All right.
Yes, sir.
So, as I mentioned before we hopped on, I do a final two. But before we do that, I think there are a lot of people who, after hearing what you've had to say, whether it's having questions about how to set goals, having questions about how to hit their revenue in business, how to up their abilities as a salesperson, or just how to start moving the dial towards becoming a better version of themselves. Where can people connect with you? Because I think you are an awesome resource.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. The two best places to connect with me would be Instagram and YouTube. I have a YouTube channel. It's just Pouya Haidari. You can look it up. And I have my Instagram is also Pouya Haidari. So it's the same ad handle all throughout social media. You can find me there. On IG, feel free to send me a DM. I'll do my best to get back to you or someone on my team will. These days, it's a little bit jammed in there. So I'll do my best regardless. On YouTube, you can check out the content. I do my best to give as much value as possible and actually help people because I just know, again, where I've been from the age of 16 to today. And I know one thing that I always had, I would watch these interviews, these videos, look up to these mentors. And I always felt like they're not answering the questions directly, or they're not saying what I'm looking for, or they're not giving, and I know the reason for that today, but I wanted to become that person who can then really help the younger generation and give them these direct answers of what it actually takes, what's actually required, what the reality of success looks like. And that's what I look to do on my YouTube. So I drop videos every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They can definitely check me out there. And yeah, that's pretty much the two main places that they can find me.
Sweet. All right. Look him up. You will not regret it. All right,
Yes, sir.
man. So getting into the final two. So these are two questions I ask everybody, no matter who the guest is. It's just a good way to kind of wrap it up. So the
Okay.
first question is more just for my sheer curiosity. What for you right now is the next step in you becoming your best self?
Hmm. It's a good question. That's a deep one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Um, to becoming my best self. I would say that goes beyond, for me, that goes beyond like business and investing and things like that. So I wouldn't even think with that. I would be thinking on a personal level. Um, I think it's a tough one. I can't pinpoint one thing. What I would say is the continuous process of learning, being a lifelong learner, being, a student of the game, being a student of knowledge. It's one thing I actually learned from Charlie Munger, this big blue book right here, Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's a huge, heavy, scary looking textbook, but it's an amazing one to read. I would highly recommend it. And one thing that I've learned from him when he talks about mental models taken from all the different disciplines to help make your decisions and things like that, I've used that in sales. But what I've learned from him is you need to be a student of lifelong learning. You need to really have a commitment to lifelong learning. You need to always, like, that's what life is, in my opinion. This is just a personal opinion. In my personal opinion, life is literally about evolution, about progress, about growth on a literal level and how we've evolved to this point over billions of years, but also on a more metaphorical level of just constantly growing, constantly evolving. So that's what I would say on a personal level. For me to go to that next level, it would be absorbing as much knowledge as I can, hitting my target of reading 2 to 3 books every week, and then just keeping up with my personal fitness and everything as well. I have some goals on that front. It would just really be, again, pouring into myself, investing in myself in every way, and being a student of lifelong learning.
Dude, I will say for anyone who doesn't know like how much it takes to read 2 to 3 books every week, my goal is 52 books in 52 weeks. And like I thought that was pretty gnarly. So to like triple that, which now I might have to, now that like I
Yeah,
know
man,
what's out
making you
there.
think big.
Exactly. So like that's awesome. I think like I'm assuming you know the name Tom Bilyeu,
Yeah.
founder. Oh yeah, so he's amazing. But his concept of like your identity should be wrapped around being the learner. It's an anti-fragile identity.
Mhm.
If someone tells you you're wrong about something, it can't be a diss because you are a learner. You want to learn how you're wrong. And so I
Yeah,
think that is
100%.
such an amazing mindset to have going through this crazy thing called life. So huge props for that. I think it's awesome what
Appreciate it,
your
man. I think
pursuit
that's the
is.
only way to be, I really think that's the only way to go. I think Tom Billy has a great point on that too. He probably gets that from Nassim Taleb on the whole anti-fragile mindset. And he's got a lot of golden nuggets too. So I would check that guy out and read some of his books. And just to add to that as well, I look at guys who I work with or some of my mentors who are reading, a book a day, or I hear stories of, again, I can't verify this, but I constantly hear stories of Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Bill Gates, these guys reading 8 hours a day plus every single day. Bill Gates taking the notorious vacations away where he goes into the cottage and he makes some of his biggest decisions there, where he completely isolates himself with a bunch of books. I've heard of other really successful figures and names who go on vacations and take 12 books with them and make that like a thing to do. I remember when I went on my trip last year, I went away for 2 months and just traveled across Europe with my girlfriend. It was a great thing to do. It was, again, be selfish. For 8 years to a decade, I was grinding, working 6-day weeks, 14, 16-hour days, to be able to then do something like that where I can pour into others and, selflessly give. But anyways, I took a bunch of books on that trip with me, and it was nice to just be in different places, reading, absorbing knowledge. So anyways, my point is I compare myself to guys like that, and then 2 to 3 books a week become peanuts. Then my goal looks like a joke, and I would recommend to do that as well, especially if you're busy. It can be easy to make justifications and, running a business, doing all these things. I know how busy I am and I know how crazy that goal is, but that's why it requires me to wake up at 4:30 a.m. Right. So, you know, I think I think it's a good thing that you said of, you thought one book was a lot and now you're thinking 2 to 3. It's always good to look at some people and make your goals look like it's nothing. It's just good perspective.
That's why I love this, man. Like the people that I get to sit down with and just see how, and I mean, as humble of a guy as you are, like it's so true to say people like you have that think big mentality. And in order to think big, you need to set these very ambitious goals that
Mhm.
almost make people's jaw drop, including mine, like 3 books a week. But that's why I love this is it really goes to show you like the box that is the limit you put on yourself can be just blown up.
Yeah.
And so I'm very thankful that you mentioned that because now it forces me to think about like, okay, how am I limiting myself in that area? So
Good, man, 100%. And I would tell you something that I think is going to be really useful to everybody else listening. Don't hear that and just say, I'm going to 3 books a week, because you're more than likely not going to stick to it. It's probably not going to happen. If it's not real to you, if it's just based off a momentary, motivation or inspiration that you're feeling right now, it's probably not going to stick. And I've had so much of that throughout the years. That's why I know. So when people are listening, you just mentioned people like me setting really big, ambitious goals. That's all good. But if right now you're, at zero, don't set a goal to have a private jet by the end of this year. It's not going to happen, more than likely. Crazy things happen. It could, but more than likely, if I had to bet on it, it won't happen. So that doesn't help you. That goes back to playing a losing game. You're setting up a game for yourself that you're not going to win. So what I would say is have micro steps to get there. And then at certain levels, you can take leaps. Like I think when you hit your first six figures, when you hit 100K, you shouldn't be looking at 150 or even 200. I think you should probably be looking at 250 or 300K. That's the next natural progression, at least in my mind. That's how I've always seen it. It's just weird, but that's just how I always see it. That's what I've observed in business as well. That would be the next natural progression. And then after that, it would probably be $500,000 or even $1 million, depending on if you're in business, if you're whatever. So I would say there's incremental steps to take. So if you're reading one book a week right now, and I'm telling you, I'm doing 2 to 3 books a week, it shouldn't be I instantly want to change. It should be looking at your schedule to see what it's taking right now for you to read 1 book a week, and what would it take for you to change that to 1.5, or maybe even start the next book, start the first chapter of the next book. Maybe it's an extra hour per week, and you add that in. And then how many hours would you have to add in to just make that 2 books? You add that in. When that's a consistent habit for you and it's something you enjoy doing and you're going to stick to, then add in the 3rd one, or, you can go from there. But I would just say, don't get too ambitious to anybody listening and set some ridiculous goal that's not real to you, because then it's not going to excite you enough to go for it. Even in my goal setting practice, I set goals that are just out of reach. So they're big goals. They're just out of reach. They're almost a little bit out of reach for me to grasp. But I know if I worked my ass off, if I did everything correctly, if everything was on point, I could do it. I'm not setting a goal where I don't even believe I'm going to get there, because that doesn't serve you.
Yeah, man. And I think like another part too, and I'll try to wrap up quick. I know you have a pretty busy schedule, but like what you said, I think it comes down to your priorities too. Like for me, reading a book a week right now is awesome. I also listen to a lot of podcasts like you talk about. I have a lot of mentors that I try to keep up with, make sure that I'm up to date with the newest information they come out with and the people that they're talking to. And so there are a lot of ways to educate yourself outside of reading. But if your priority is education, then yes, you need to emphasize how to amp up that particular area. But yeah, I like what you're saying. Like you need to figure out what actually is your priority and how do you adjust your schedule to maximize your priorities at whatever point in time you're at. So I'm glad you brought that up. Now,
Absolutely, man. Yep.
the last question, I think you'll enjoy this one. So this question, you just get to directly get at the audience. So you get to challenge the listeners to do one thing that when done will teach them something or better their life in some way, or just something along the lines of becoming a better version of themselves. What would your one challenge to them be?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things I could say, but it feels like at least the theme of the conversation has been about goals and goal setting and having a clear vision for your future. So I'll just keep it along these lines. My challenge would be to sit down and dedicate 15 to 30 minutes to doing that goal setting practice. Again, the 5 categories are personal, mind and body, relationships, whether with your partner or relationships in life, business, investing, and fun goals. And sit down and write some goals. Write 3 to 5 goals for each category. Think with the next 12 months in mind for the first 3, ideally, just so you have, again, some real goals that are tangible, just out of reach, but tangible on the 4th and 5th one. If you want to have fun and, think with 5, 7, 10 years in mind, go ahead. But my challenge to you would be to get clear on where you are in life currently and what you actually want to create. What's the lifestyle that you want to create? And are you playing that game right now? Like, whose game are you playing right now? This is such a big wake-up call for so many people. And I've had to wake up a lot of my coaching clients and people that I work with, or just in different businesses that I'm working with, sales professionals and whatnot, that are having this constant up and down, inconsistency, just struggling, just don't know what's wrong and why they're always up and down. And I always go to this one thing. I ask them, whose game are you playing? Why are you showing up to work? Why are you here today? Why? Have you ever stopped to ask yourself that question? You need to make money. Why? And if it's just money, you can go work at McDonald's and make money. You can do a lot of things to make money, right? Like, why are you here? Why are you in this specific industry? Why are you in this specific field? Why are you doing what you're doing? Whose game are you playing? Whose agenda are you playing to? Or is this your own life plan? Because again, back to Jim Rohn, if it's not, and you're in someone else's life plan, they don't have much plan for you. So just understanding, like, I'm going to play my own game. I'm going to set the rules. I'm going to create a life that's on my own terms where I feel truly fulfilled. That's always been my North Star, living a life on my own terms where I truly feel fulfilled. And to do that, you need to get clarity first, and you need to sit down with yourself and have that hard conversation. And don't go to with your partner. Don't do this with your family. Nobody's influence. Don't listen to podcasts or mentors or gurus. Nobody, because then you're going to fall into their agenda and what they're telling you and what their view of life is. Sit with yourself and really do this, introspective activity of setting some goals for your future. Follow that guideline that I mentioned and see what that does for you. And if then you want to share your goals with your partner or whatnot, then go ahead and do that when you've come to some clear guidelines. But that would be my challenge to them. Figure out what your game is in life, set some goals, and as of this moment, play that game.
Whew, that is how you end a freaking podcast right there.
Yes, sir.
Pouya, I want to thank you for coming on. This was amazing, just getting some time with you. And I want to thank you for all of the people you're helping, all of the amazing examples you're setting in business, in life, with your relationships, with your mindset. I always have so much respect and so much gratitude for people who are really doing what it takes to set up the lifestyle they want, work the career they want, surround themselves with the people they want, and play their own game. So I got to thank you for that, man.
I appreciate it, man. I hope everybody got some value out of this. And thank you so much for having me. It was definitely an amazing talk. I enjoyed it. Looking forward to do more in the future.
Oh, you know it, man. I'll be ready for round two. So for people listening, thank you as always for tuning in. Again, as always, if you have comments, questions, concerns, agreements, or disagreements, feel free to comment, or you can always reach out to us privately. His information as well as mine will be in the show notes. If you know someone who is either a little too aggressive with no patience, maybe a little too patient with no aggression, someone who needs to work on their goal setting, or someone who's just playing somebody else's game, share this with them. That is why we make this content. It's so everyone possible can get it free of charge. So thank you as always for listening. And until next time, keep bettering yourselves.